Joined by one of the greatest grapplers of all time, the king of jiu-jitsu himself, Gordon Ryan. Gordon, really good to speak to you. Fought the first time. Welcome to One Championship. Your signing was caused a bit of a buzz. Now you've got your first matchup. Shinya Aoki, August 17th. It's an interesting one. You're much bigger than him, but he is an MMA grappling legend, I think it's fair to say. How intrigued are you by this debut in one and your opponent?
Yes. So, I mean, it's going to be great. I know people think that I'm way bigger than Shinya. Shinya, I think at one point fought at 155, but I think he actually walks around like 200 pounds. So I think that I'll only be like 20 to 25 pounds heavier than him. And it's not going to be as big of a weight difference as everybody thinks. But I'm excited to compete against him. He's a legend in grappling and in mixed martial arts. So it's going to be fun to go out there and compete against a guy like him. Gary's competed against him before. So it'll be fun for me to go out and put on a show.
Yeah, Gary heel hooked him in 2017. I assume you've seen that fight. What did you make of that one? And is it funny for you that he's faced Gary and that Gary has the win over him?
Yeah, I mean, I watched it, and I think that when I saw him compete against Gary, the one thing I took away from it was like, wow, he looks way stronger and way bigger than Gary. So like how he ever fought at 155 is just a mystery to me, because Gary's not a big 155er, but he's not a tiny 155er. So I think it's going to be interesting, especially wrestling him in the cage. I think it's going to be a big big difference as opposed to just grappling on the open mat. Going against a high-level MMA fighter in the cage could be something that's very interesting.
Would you describe yourself as an MMA fan? Have you been paying attention to the sport and whether it's the UFC, One Championship? Shinya's been in the game a long time, kind of tearing people's arms off in the ring in Japan. Has he been on your radar? How closely do you follow MMA?
Not as closely as I should, not as closely as I follow jiu-jitsu. The first time I really started to research Shinya was when Gary was competing against him for his camp. But other than that, I know he's been around forever. I know that he's has a very grappling heavy style when he fights. So I don't know too much about him I haven't looked him up so much yet. I just did a little bit of research when Gary was competing against him. But I'm going to do more as the match comes closer.
Where are you right now? Have you been spending time down in Puerto Rico, or where do you spend most of your time right now?
Yeah, we live in Puerto Rico, so I'm here full time, and then whenever I have to go to travel or film instructionals, and I move around, but most of the time we're in Puerto Rico.
How big of an adventure has that been for you guys? I remember speaking to Gary just before the move, and it was an interesting one, right? Moving the whole team down there, that's pretty unprecedented, but how's it been for you? Has it turned out nicely?
It's amazing. I like it way better than New Jersey and New York. I mean, as far as the scenery goes, obviously I still have friends and family in New Jersey and New York that I miss. But as far as just the scenery, driving into the Lincoln Tunnel every day is a lot different than taking, a road that is right along the beach to training. So it's been great for me. I love Puerto Rico. I love it here. I love living here. Once our school's open, it's going to be a lot easier for everyone. But for me, it's been great so far.
Looking very smart there in the blue One jersey. How did One come about? You must have been quite in demand, and Chatri was the one who got it done. Why did you choose One? I mean, the Gary Tonin connection must have been significant there, right?
Yeah, I've been talking to Chantry for a while, actually, since 2017. We've been going back and forth about MMA contracts and things like this. But after I won 2021 ADCC, I wanted to focus on 2019 ADCC. I wanted to focus on the 2021, 2022 ADCC super fight. So I told Chantry, I'm like, listen, I won't fight MMA anywhere else. I'll only fight for you guys. But I'm just focused on grappling right now. So maybe we can do a grappling contract, and maybe One can have like a BJJ belt where they have like their Muay Thai and they have their MMA belts and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'll do grappling for now, and then if I choose to fight, I'll fight with you guys. So I think it's a nice little segue and a nice way to get my foot in the door and compete in front of a different audience. Whereas most of my competitions now are the USA, and I'll be competing over in Asia a lot, so that'll be good.
What chances have we got of seeing you in MMA? Like, when someone's as good at one discipline as you are, I mean, it's so interesting. Fans are desperate to see it. I want to see it, but it's very ominous. Will it happen? I don't know. What would you give it out of 10 that we see you competing in MMA in the next 3 years?
The next 3 years probably pretty low because I have to focus. I mean, ADCC is not for another year and a half plus. So the main focus for right now is going to be ADCC. And then after that, I would have to kind of fully dedicate myself to not sucking at mixed martial arts before I was going to make the transition. So next 3 years, probably pretty low, but if you're maybe the next 5 years will be a little bit higher. I'm only 25, so I have time to do, whatever I want. But the focus right now is definitely on ADCC 2022.
Yeah, being 25 and having achieved what you've achieved is pretty ridiculous. How are you staying hungry at this? Is it just because you love it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even about competing against the best guys in the world anymore. I know that I'm better than the best guys in the world. For me, it's just about being the best I can be before I get too old to get, to be competitive with the best guys in the world. For me, it's really about just being the best possible athlete I can until I'm around 40 years old, when my body just starts to peak and you start to decline in grappling. So for me, it's really about just being the best that I can be by the time I'm 40 years old. It has really little to do with the other guys. I'm beating the other guys just as a consequence of getting better myself and, chasing that progression. But for me, it's mostly about self progression that versus training to beat the other best guys in the world.
Before this interview, I watched the match with Gary at the ADCC in 2019. Is it strange for you? It's different, right, than when you fight your teammate in MMA. It's probably a lot more significant because you guys roll together pretty much day in, day out. But was it strange for you competing against him? He gave you your black belt, you're a protege of his. Do you laugh about that a lot? Do you give him stick about it? How does that work?
Yeah, we joke about it sometimes. That was like my most heartbreaking moment ever in competition because Gary was really good to me coming up. He got his black belt when I was a blue belt, and he kind of coached me up through the ranks through blue belt and purple belt and brown belt. And him and John gained my black belt. So you have to go out and fight him, and you can't have fake matches because if they catch you having a fake match, they kick you out and you're not allowed back in. So I had to go out and really try to finish him. I went out and I competed against him and I ended up finishing him. And I was like, I wanted to cry after the match. I was like, oh man, this is terrible. But it is what it is. I mean, there's no hard feelings between us, and we laugh about it now.
I'm interested. You get called out when you're at the top of the game, right? By all sorts of people. I remember interviewing Jeff Munson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was kind of a grappling MMA. He really wanted a super fight with you, and then kind of dawned on me how many different characters from MMA and grappling and wrestling want to fight you. What are some of the more intriguing ones for you, or some of the craziest call outs that you've had?
As far as call outs, nothing too crazy. I know probably over the years, the people who have wanted to see me compete against, the number one request I think has been Brock Lesnar, just because Brock Lesnar is so enormous and explosive and he has a good wrestling background. And I think people just want to see that, just a freak show. I'm 220 pounds. Brock walks around like 320 pounds. He initially couldn't fight in the UFC because he couldn't make heavyweight. So he's just a specimen for sure. So I think over the years, Brock has probably been the number one request from people just because they want to see that. And then you have the more hardcore MMA fans that want to see me compete against real good jiu-jitsu guys like Damian Maia, Jacques Ray, people like that. But there hasn't been too many call outs from MMA guys because they're so focused on competing for MMA titles that they don't want to come in and do a jiu-jitsu match against a guy who's going to maybe break their leg for a couple $1,000s. So MMA guys don't really call out jiu-jitsu guys too much because there's not that much money in competing in jiu-jitsu, whereas in MMA there's a ton of money.
The Brock Lesnar fight sounds like a massive pile of cash to me. Is there any chance that ever happens? Would you be down for it?
I mean, if he wanted to compete, sure. I don't know what he's doing right now. If he's training, if he's not training, I think he lives in Montana, in the middle of the woods. So I don't know what his deal is right now. But if he ever wanted to do a grappling match, he could definitely do a grappling match.
I'm interested by the fact that Marcus Buchecha is now transitioning to MMA. Yeah, I mean, we basically already put it to bed that you're not going to be competing in MMA for a good few years yet, but that seemed like the perfect debut matchup for me with your history. You're both 0-0 in MMA. Do you agree with that? That would be a good MMA fight for you when the time came, depending on, because I imagine he's going to debut quite soon.
Yes, other than the fact that it would have to be at a catch weight. Like, people don't understand. Like, I walk around like 215 to 220 pounds. Bashesha's like 265. So we're like in like 3 different weight classes. I would probably cut to, I mean, I could probably make 185, but more realistically, I would probably fight 205. So at least one weight class. But 40 pounds in MMA is, you know, in any sport, really, any combat sport is a huge difference. So it's definitely something that is interesting, but he's definitely has a significant size advantage on me. But he had a significant size advantage on me when we competed at ADCC. So that's never been really an issue for me, but it's definitely something that is interesting to me and interesting to a lot of the fans.
In terms of not really watching a lot of MMA, I imagine you're keeping a close eye on Gary. I mean, how close is he, do you feel? Do you think he's going to be champion within this year? It looks like Tan Lee fight is going to be pretty special.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, you know, he was supposed to have a title fight pretty recently, I'm pretty sure, or maybe one more fight and then the title. I'm not sure what they're talking to him about. But the champion I know was hurt for a good amount of time, and I think he had a hand injury or something. So it'll be interesting to see when he decides that he's ready to come back. And you know, I think that Gary should be next in line for the fight. He has, I think he's 6-0 and he's has 5 finishes. So I mean, there's not really too much more he can do before he gets a shot at the title. I mean, he's been pretty dominant in the division and outside the division as well. I mean, he had 2 fights at 170. So I mean, I think that, you know, he's on a good trajectory to get that title shot, to get the belt.
Finally, mate, I think for those fans in Asia or wherever who've never seen any jiu-jitsu, any grappling, a Gordon Ryan versus Shinya Aoki fight is a pretty good place to start, right? What is it about this sport, man? I've heard it changes people's lives. If you were to explain it, and how do you explain it to someone with absolutely no idea? What is it that's so special? Why do you love jiu-jitsu?
Well, there are many things. For a lot of people, and you know, for me, I think that when you go into a classroom where every day someone's trying to break your legs, break your arms, or strangle you unconscious, all of the other kind of issues that you have in your day, like paying your bills or like getting the kids to school on time, I think those like seem pretty mild to like someone like who could potentially break one of your arms in half. So, you know, it's just a way to kind of, for a lot of people, I mean, for me, obviously it's my profession, but for a lot of people, it's just their way to kind of escape from the world. Like, there's nothing else you can really worry about when you have a 250-pound guy on top of you and he's trying to break your neck, or, you know, or strangle you unconscious. So I think it's, for a lot of people, like almost like a therapy, like where it's, you have your life and then you just go to jiu-jitsu, you have an hour or two where you're just away from everything, and the only thing you have to worry about is performing and doing what you need to do in the mats. So I think it's just a good kind of vice to get away from your everyday problems.
That was a great answer. It was great interviewing me, mate. Really excited to have you in One Championship. Look forward to covering you, and all the best. Cheers.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.